Hi, Kelly. I'm so glad to have you with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me on. Super excited.
Yes, well, this is an important topic. I'm excited to share. We're going to talk all about ADHD and all the things that go with it. But before we get started, could you just give us a little background about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Oh, yes. So, to be honest, I've always been a very anxious child. I always knew that about myself. I just found it hard to focus. I always felt like I was studying harder than the rest of my friends. Always got good grades, but I was like a really good trier, right? I just had to really, really try harder than I felt like everybody else did. But I really realized that something was wrong in college. I was in my last year of pharmacy school and I had to go to a GI specialist because I was having all sorts of stomach issues. I walked out of a colonoscopy with about 4 different meds and a diagnosis of IBS, anxiety, and depression. And I was really frustrated, honestly, because I took my meds and they did nothing for me. I felt like the side effects were terrible. I wasn't getting any better. And from there, honestly, it was a very slow progression of me digging deeper into helping myself. And now I help others. And so I found myself behind a pharmacy counter and I'm dishing out meds all day. And everyone has side effects. Everyone's complaining to me. They're all getting their doses increased every month and they're upset with how they're feeling. And I took a really hard look at myself based off what I was seeing behind the pharmacy counter. And I realized I was on that same vicious cycle. And I'm not dogging meds because we do need meds. They're important for a lot of reasons. But for me, they weren't agreeing with me and I was watching everybody else struggle too. And I decided I was going to figure this out. So I slowly got off all the meds that I was on. I was on antidepressants and stuff for IBS and so I slowly got off these meds by digging into natural medicine and really helping myself. And going back to college, what's frustrating about that whole situation of going in and getting colonoscopy, leaving with all these meds and all these different diagnoses, I accepted that and I didn't ask any questions. And I really wish I would have, but I was young, I was at like what, 22 maybe. And if they would have asked me more about my diet and my lifestyle, they would have heard that I was in a toxic relationship. They would have heard that I eat ramen noodles and mac and cheese and like that, like all the time. I drank way too many rum and cokes. I mean, I was in college. I wasn't sleeping. I was eating like crap. And but nobody asked me any of those things. And now looking back, I know how important asking those questions is and taking a holistic approach. But to be very honest, it was just a very slow progression of me taking a natural approach to my own health and eventually helping others do the same. I started by taking clients in my basement after work. A little creepy, but that's what I did. And now I've got, epigenetic certifications and I do functional labs and I have all these fancy tools, but it really started just by trying to help other people really take a natural approach the same way I did.
That's great. And I think you and I have that same background of seeing people just get placed on more and more medications and feeling worse. And while that is the answer sometimes, it's just not the end all be all. And that's so often the only option we're given. And I think that's like where you want to take that stand and say, no, you have other choices. You don't have to just listen. And I love how you pointed out that no one asked. No one asked. I think when you're working with people, when I'm working with people, we're looking at all of those factors in their life. We're asking the questions. We're getting to know who they are and what it comes. And I had that same thing. I was a little past you, but it was like 23 when everything like my gut issues started with the anxiety that comes along with it that now we know can be related to the gut and all those things. And just really a lot of us have that journey where it's self-healing and then wanting to share that. So that's amazing. So let's get into some of the root causes you see for ADHD besides genetics.
Yes, I love talking about this. And okay, so I'll start off with a few of the most common things I see. Gut health being number one. And so often we don't associate ADHD symptoms with gut health issues. But I want people to know it's so closely linked. I see a lot of gut imbalances like candida overgrowth, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I see a lot of malabsorption of protein. Protein is one of the building blocks of dopamine. And so if you're not absorbing protein because you've got imbalances of the gut or inflammation of the gut or leaky gut, that's a big contributor to ADHD symptoms. So often we're taught that ADHD is a dopamine deficiency. And I agree with that, but I also know that there's many other things that could be contributing. And a lot of people would say, well, it's a dopamine receptor issue. Well, so we've got to increase dopamine. We know that, but there's a lot of reasons that your dopamine could be low, and gut health being one of them. I also see a lot of vitamin and mineral deficiencies as well. If we're deficient in certain vitamins and minerals, we cannot make dopamine as much as we'd like. And so we really got to hone in on what are the deficiencies. But not only that, it's not appropriate for me to tell somebody, here, you're deficient, run labs, they're deficient in all these things, here's a supplement. That's not enough. I want people to know that it's what's underneath that deficiency that matters. Why are you deficient? Of course, diet can play a huge role, but I want to know, do you have malabsorption of the gut? Do you have, like we said, inflammation of the gut? What is underneath that deficiency? And really working on correcting that issue instead of just throwing a supplement at it. I love supplements. I'm a big
Yeah.
supplement snob, but I also want to make sure I get to the real root cause. So gut health is huge. Another thing is nervous system dysregulation. I don't think this is taught about enough. And what I mean by nervous system dysregulation is just we are stressed out in general all the time. We live stressed out lives, and we're in a constant state of fight or flight, unfortunately, for most people. And that causes a lot of anxiety. It causes a lot of difficulty with focus, and it also causes digestive issues. When your body is prioritizing stress, because it'll prioritize stress over anything else. So when you're stressed out, your body is not concentrating on digesting. It's not concentrating on, hormone production. And so it causes a lot of digestive issues. And then here we go again with the vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And it's just a really big vicious cycle. Not only that, but nervous system dysregulation causes a lot of fatigue. And I see a combination when my clients come to me, it's never just one thing that they're complaining about. Usually they're complaining about focus, anxiety, and fatigue. And all of these things go hand in hand. So nervous system dysregulation is huge. And so we've got to concentrate on coming out of that fight or flight state on a daily basis. And the best way to do that, well, it's different for everyone. It's what
Yeah.
works for
I
you.
know. Yeah. I always say that too.
Meditation's great.
Uh-huh.
Box breathing. I love box breathing. And all that is breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. I did that before we came on this podcast.
Yes.
It's just a really great way to kind of just calm the nervous system and bring you into more of a relaxed state. So really, but the key to these things, I can tell you all day long, you need to meditate, you need to box breathe, but it's the consistency of these things and making sure that we're doing these things on a daily basis. Maybe it's for you, it's a walking meditation. Maybe meditation seems like torture. And I talk to a lot of people who are like, well, I'm anxious, I have anxiety and ADHD. You expect me to meditate? And I'm like, let's start slow, go for a walk. Right. And it's building up that consistency over time. But nervous system dysregulation is huge. I also see a lot of heavy metal toxicity, and that really impairs brain conductivity and causes a lot of fatigue. And it actually increases candida overgrowth of the gut as well. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies, like I talked about, and genetics do play a role. I don't think that we can skip right over that and say that genetics doesn't play a role. However, I do genetic testing on every single client, and you'd be surprised how a lot of times I don't see as much of a genetic risk. And so that makes me focus back on their labs and say, what's underlying? What are some of these other things that could be contributing to their symptoms? And also, I have to make sure people are aware too that trauma is also something that we have to consider. I'm not a therapist. I'm not well versed in helping clients with trauma. That's why I also think it's a really good idea to be seeing a therapist if a client's working with me. But I don't think we can skip over trauma either. So those are just a few things that I commonly see.
Yeah, those are great. And I do think just pointing out, I love how you were talking about the breathing too, because with people I'm working with, I often will say, that's something you can get in a short period of time. You don't have to do a
Mhm.
20-minute meditation or, we want to maybe graduate to that, but you can actually really control that sympathetic nervous parasympathetic response with the breath. And it is amazing. So let's, can we get a little bit into, because people are getting more well versed in some of these genetic things, into
Mhm.
a little bit of common genetic things that actually would affect ADHD?
Yeah, great question. I love talking about toxin overload. There's a genetic component for a lot of my clients where they are going to be more prone to being overloaded with toxins. And what I mean by that is environmental toxins, heavy metals, toxins from processed foods or from everyday household chemicals or makeup. I mean, you got to think how many toxins we come into contact with on a daily basis. And for some of us, we're genetically predisposed to not be able to detoxify from those as well as we'd like to. And that really bogs down our liver. It causes some, poor gut health as well. And it's just something that we need to make sure we're concentrating on reducing exposure to toxins as much as possible. So living a low toxin lifestyle, but also really helping our body to get rid of toxins as much as possible. So making sure that we're not constipated. I love a sauna. I have a sauna right behind me. It's one of my most favorite things. But also NAC is one of my favorite supplements to help support the liver. I see with genetics, a lot of people are predisposed to be lower on glutathione, which is our kind of our master antioxidant, our master detoxifier, and that's what NAC, the supplement, helps to boost is glutathione. So that's another area that I see with genetics, and I do see some people are genetically predisposed to have lower dopamine or lower dopamine receptor activity. And so knowing these genetics, of course, I can't change your genes, but I can help you support those genetics. And that's knowing what you have is the key to help us say, okay, well, here's what we can do about it. Here's how we can support those genes.
Yeah, that it's true because we can't change it, but only, when you look at the studies, only about 20% generally is genetics, and the other
Mhm.
80% is environment and all the things that you're talking about that we're dealing with. And really focusing there can make a huge difference, and we can work around those genetics. But thank you for telling us, because I know people are hearing MTHFR and all, which is one of the things you're talking about that is, help people don't actually methylate as well and process
Yeah.
toxins and things you're hearing about. So you may feel like, okay, am I in that category? But we can actually overcome that, which is really great. So what are some top things you think are actually contributing to your symptoms that people may not even realize?
Oh, for me, I have to go back to gut health. I just think that's one of the most important things that's contributing to our symptoms because in order for us to make dopamine for focus or serotonin for mood, it takes certain vitamins and minerals to do that. And if our gut if we have poor gut health or inflammatory gut conditions or infections of the gut, many of us have underlying infections, we don't even realize it. We're going to have a lot harder time producing these neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. And so really I think that's one of the biggest contributors that I see that needs to be looked at first. So when I'm working with clients, I will prioritize nervous system dysregulation and healing of the gut first because like I said, I can tell you to change your diet all day long. I can throw you a bunch of supplements, but none of that matters if you've got an underlying imbalance of the gut that is, you're not absorbing your nutrition as much as we need you to. And so we got to prioritize gut health. But even more than that, like going back to the nervous system dysregulation, if you are dysregulated and in fight or flight all the time, your chance of healing is going to be a lot lower because your body is not going to prioritize that right now. It's not going to prioritize anything that needs to happen like digestion and rest in order for you to heal. And so we've really got to work on getting your body out of that fight or flight state. So I would say if someone's starting on this journey, they've got to prioritize nervous system regulation, so bringing their body out of fight or flight, and they also would really benefit from prioritizing gut health as well.
Yeah, I feel like everybody should prioritize gut health, right?
Yes.
And nervous system dysregulation.
Yes.
Stress and gut health are
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the root of so many health issues. And this is
Really
just
are.
another one. I feel like it's always kind of even more working with hormones or working with skin health or
Mhm.
all of these things, you really have to focus on those things. Well, this is a little bit, we hear a lot about kids with ADHD. So, you're saying, do you work more with kids or with adults when you're dealing with this?
I work with both kids and adults, actually, and, what's neat about the kids is that they're so resilient. They're so
Mhm.
resilient, but I love to see what their deficiencies are too, their underlying, deficiencies in vitamins and minerals that could be contributing. But also, we've gotta remember with kids, diet is huge, and really watching for their intake of MSG and food additives, flavorings, food dyes are huge. Red and yellow, especially. Red can make them very aggressive. Yellow can make them really inattentive. And so, really watching their intake of what they're eating, how much processed foods they're eating. And I know it's hard because kids don't want to eat anything besides processed foods half the time. But I will tell you, one of my best tips that I give to the moms and dads that I work with, if they have young kids and they really struggle with diet, this is something that's really helped even my kids, is doing smoothies first thing in the morning, especially before you send them off for school. If you're giving them like a sugary cereal or just like toast, I mean, that's all getting processed as sugar in the body. And so they're going to have a lot harder time focusing in school if you don't give them something high protein in the morning. So what I do with my kids to kind of sneak it in on them is I'll make them a fruit smoothie in the morning. So like a handful of mixed berries and a scoop of protein powder. I will also add in a scoop of almond butter and Greek yogurt and chia seeds. So lots of healthy fats, lots of protein, lots of fiber. And what am I missing here? Oh, a half of an avocado. Don't worry, they won't taste it. It makes it
Yeah.
really, really creamy. And so lots of balanced, good things in there, healthy fats, protein, carbs, etc. And but that high protein in the morning is so helpful for their little brains and getting them to focus in school and really, keeping their blood sugars regulated too, I think is huge. And parents need to understand the ups and the downs of the blood sugar for the kids is a big contributor to their symptoms. So just
Mhm.
a way for the parents to kind of sneak in some good nutrition, and it tastes amazing. They don't My kids ask for it. They don't get mad at me. You can hide things in there. You can hide greens in
Yes,
there. You
you
can hide
can, I
vitamins in there. You can hide
know.
lots of stuff.
It's great.
So it is. And I was having issues with one of my daughters was, kind of getting notes sent home like she's not focused when the rest of us are. She's not working when the rest of us, and you can imagine I do this for a living.
Yeah.
So this like crushed my soul to have this happen. But I knew what to do. I knew I had to, more protein in the morning and no sugary cereals in the morning. And we switched up her supplements a little bit, and within a week and a half, it was a completely different note home. So
That's
there is ways to help these kids. I think it's just really creating better habits, and sometimes you just got to kind of trick them in the process.
Yeah, I know. I always like bribery too. You can always like give them a little
Yeah.
reward if they're like, well, you know what? We're trying to do this. And if you do it for, 30 days, we get a little surprise for the little
Uh-huh.
ones. Mine are like
Yes.
beyond that now that they're getting a little older, but I could do that kind of stuff with when they were littler too, which is
Uh-huh.
good. Do you
I am
see
not
different?
above bribery.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I feel like whatever works, right?
Yes.
Little rewards are, when we're trying to. I was remember like I needed my daughter to go gluten free for a period of time, and we did that. We're like, okay, here's your calendar, and here's the days you're gonna do it, and then there's like a surprise at the end of of your calendar, which is she did. She actually asked. This is like a little side story off the topic, but she actually asked me if she could do it again and that's actually a good point to make because we finished,
Yeah.
she got her reward and she felt so much better that then she's like, well, can we, and she had her reward and her surprise, it was something little, but she said, hey, can we do that again? I really liked that because it's like, okay, well, you got a reward and you feel a lot better, so whenever you
And
can
to
get to
follow
do
through
that.
with something builds confidence.
Hmm. Yes, yep.
Yeah.
And so do you see a difference in symptoms of the kids versus adults?
So with kids, yeah, a lot of times, kids they're going to be fidgety in class. They don't want to pay attention. They're a little bit more hyperactive, a little bit more of like the classic. When you think of ADD or ADHD, you think of like the young hyper boy, right? That's like
Mhm.
running around. And so kids can, present that way a little bit more often, maybe just not as much focus in school, and maybe a little bit more aggressiveness and emotional dysregulation. In adults, it's not as much as like the hyperactivity. We are very overstimulated. We are easily overwhelmed. And unless we have a big deadline with consequences, sometimes it's a lot harder for us to really get things done. And so, but it looks different for everybody. And that's one of the points I wanted to make today is it I think, like I said, with the classic hyper boy symptoms, that's how we've always thought of ADD, ADHD, whereas it can look so different for everyone. And for me personally, and for a lot of the clients that I work with, like I said, it is a lot of we're very sensitive, overstimulated, um, and it's harder for us to focus, and we've got anxiety, and it's just a lot of overwhelm, I'll say. And so it just looks different for everybody though. So emotions can be a big part of it too. Emotional dysregulation, we tend to, like, fly off the handle a little easier, a little bit more irritable, and not as resilient with stress, and not as resilient when we feel like someone upsets us. Just we have a harder time bouncing back. And so really important, again, to nervous system dysregulation plays a large role in that too, but also making sure to help ourselves when we know we need help. And what I mean by that is, for me, I'm just thinking of myself personally right now with the overstimulation. I can't help the fact that I can hear everything, I can sense everything, and it is just too much input all the time. And I know other people that are listening to this would, when they when you feel that, and you're like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what she's talking about. Like when there's kids talking and the
Mhm.
dogs barking and the dishwasher's going and the TV's on. Oh my gosh. My brain is just like, and someone tries to talk to me at the same time, I'm like, oh no, it's like too much input. I can't.
Mhm.
And so really trying to step away when you know you need to step away. Wearing things like loop earring or loop earbuds is a great one too, because it doesn't mute out sound, but you can still hear things, just not as it's not as loud. And listening to music when you need to. Just I tell my kids, and I've taught them, hey, I'm going to step away for a sec. And now, one of my daughters, she's poor thing, she's wired just like me, but she does the same thing. She'll come up to me if we're out and about, and if it's loud or if there's a lot of people, and she'll look at me and she said, I'm feeling a little overstimulated. And she's only 8, and I love that she can express that
Mhm.
instead of flying off the handle, or starting yelling, crying, screaming, or, just a lot of times I don't know why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And so for an adult to express that to their kids like I do, uh, I think it's important to have that communication style where you explain why you're feeling what you're feeling. And I'm going to go step away, give mom a moment, and it teaches them that they can recognize that in themselves. And so I think that's really powerful for parents out there who are struggling with kids and their emotions too, is really teach them. I mean, they're learning from you. So, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, be it by all means, but they really do learn from you and your actions. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and feeling you might lose it and you're really irritable, communicate it calmly and step away. And that teaches your kids that that's how you handle it instead. Sorry, I
That's
kind of off
wonderful.
on a tangent. I don't even know what you asked me at
No,
this
but
point.
I love it because I
Yeah.
think all moms need to, like, let's repeat this because we
Mhm.
feel guilty. Moms feel like, okay, I can't do that. I can't step away. I can't. And you're saying that actually giving yourself that permission, you're teaching your children, you're being a good example. You're not running yourself ragged because you don't feel like you can give yourself that permission. Showing
Mhm.
that as an example to your child actually teaches them. And that's really powerful too, I think, because I think sometimes when you are a mom, you do feel like, I just have to do it. I just have to push through. I have to, no matter what, I'm just go, go, go. And really, the example you can set and lessons your kids can learn at a young age is powerful.
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
Do you
Another
see? Oh, yeah,
Oh,
you
go
go.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I remembered one other thing for kids, and it goes back to supplements, omegas. Not a
Mhm.
lot of kids that are eating a lot of fish or getting enough fatty acids, and omega supplementation, omega-3 with DHA and EPA can be really, really beneficial for the clients that I work with that are younger as well, and adults, everyone.
Yeah.
But when I run labs, I see a lot of omega-3 imbalance or deficiencies, I'll say. And so that's a great thing that can be very beneficial too. That and magnesium. Um, Magnesium is very calming, magnesium glycinate in particular.
Mhm.
I've yet to run a lab on somebody that wasn't low in magnesium. And so I think that that's a great thing that people should. I mean, I don't know you, as you're listening to this, but I think getting testing done to see what your deficiencies are is a really great way to start. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that's okay. I see excuse me, I cut that. I see magnesium deficiency all the time too. So I think
Hmm.
that is just a common one, even with our soil these days and the diet that we eat. So that's great. Do you see a lot of people struggling with both ADHD and anxiety? I feel like they can go hand in hand.
Yes, absolutely. So very common to see those together. And it makes sense. If you look at it, with on a biological standpoint or from a biological standpoint, it makes sense, right? A lot of the same deficiencies are involved with vitamins and minerals. Gut health is very involved in ADHD, like we talked about, but also anxiety. And so nervous system dysregulation, that's why we feel anxiety. And so very commonly linked both of those together. So I think if you're working on either of those, a lot of the same practices can help.
Yeah, that's well, good. Well, thank you so much. This has been so informative and helpful. And can you share with our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, I have a podcast called the Rebel White Coat Podcast, and you can find me on TikTok, Kelly.rebelwhitecoat, or Instagram, Kelly_Rumpel. Those are probably the best places to find me.
Well, thanks, Kelly. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.